So some of you guys may already know that the World Drug Day, it's always marked on 26th of June every year. And the theme for this year's World Drug Day is People First. Stop stigmatization and discrimination, strengthen prevention. Of course, I'm Damilola of Dami's Little Corner, and today I'll be sharing general tips about drug use, about prevention, about raising awareness, and also about seeking help. So far, I have worked with a lot of people and helped to rehabilitate them and helped to get them back to their normal lives without drug use. And I've seen how how much transformation can occur when people are given a chance to actually fight and be better. The very first tip I'll be mentioning is that awareness has to be raised. People have to be educated about drugs, about substance use. A lot of people, especially teenagers worldwide, would know that it's something that is of concern right now worldwide. Millions of people use drugs. And from my practice in Nigeria, what I've seen is that a lot of young adults, a lot of teenagers actually use drugs. And if you ask a lot of them, they actually don't know what they're getting into when they start using drugs. They just see their friends use it. It's like a form of recreation. People are using drugs. Oh, let me just try it out, and that's how it starts. The human mind is curious by nature, and you want to know how you would feel if you use this drug. So it's just something that most teenagers would experiment with. The NDLEA is trying, but we can do much better. Like the whole place has to be, people have to hear about it. I think things like going for outreaches to secondary schools is something we should be doing, and we should be doing it very seriously. Having talks about it on the media, music playing about it on the media. But what we see is that most music that's being produced actually talks more about how you feel high on drug use, and they paint it so beautifully. And that's one of the things that probably lures young adults to actually start using drugs, because most of this music actually gives them a lot of popularity. Children from secondary schools, primary schools, in fact, should actually know about the downsides of using drugs. Some people would probably use it once and they will stop using it, whereas some people will continue using it, and it may even affect their mental health later on. It can affect physical health also. As people who you inject drugs, they can get HIV from sharing needles and all of that. They can get hepatitis. It can even affect physical health in case of overdose, things like that. It can cause serious health effects like cardiac arrest, like respiratory suppression, even death. So awareness has to be in place. People have to know these are the possibilities that can happen, and that can help to prevent young adults from actually going into substance use. I would want you to watch to the end if possible. I'll be talking about how addiction really occurs, because most people feel that addiction is a choice. So I'll be talking more about how does this addiction even come into place, and people can't just stop using drugs. So the second general tip I'll be giving about drug use is that you should I'll be addressing this more to parents, people who are in position of authority over teenagers and young adults and children. Please be there to support them. I've said this in one of my shorts videos before. Please be there to support them. You should know, especially for your teenager, you should know their schedule, what their activities are like, so that if your teenager doesn't come home at the time they're supposed to come home, you know that there's something wrong. Why didn't they come home? Where were they? Be interested in their lives, as it were. Know who their friends are, where they go to, what activities they engage in, so that once something looks like it's not going well or smoothly, you'll be able to catch it easily. So be supportive to your young adults, especially that they're navigating through life, they're experimenting a lot of things, and you wouldn't want them to start experimenting with drugs, because this can have a lot of downsides to their use. Another tip that I would say is that for teenagers, it applies for adults, it applies to anybody in any phase of life. It's that you should learn ways by which you can cope with stress, you can cope with different factors in life, because life is not always positive. Life is full of ups and downs. And one reason why people turn to drugs or substances is because they can't really cope with those stresses they face in life. So learn coping mechanisms, how to distress. You can just say, this weekend I'm going for a vacation, or I'm just going away from this town, let me just clear my head space. You get that sort of thing. That could be like a coping mechanism for you. Or just talk about it with loved ones, have trusted people that you just pour out your mind to. That can be a way for you to distress, and that would help you to not use substances or drugs as a way to cope with stress. If you've observed yourself, or if you've observed your relative or your friend, and you've seen that this person may have some symptoms that look like they're suffering from anxiety, they're suffering from mental health conditions, you should encourage them, or you should go forward and seek help for those mental health conditions. It's better to seek help and be treated by a professional, instead of using drugs as a way of trying to alleviate the symptoms. Because using street drugs may actually numb you from those symptoms you are feeling, but they won't take the condition away. If you're already using substances, you wouldn't really qualify for prevention anymore, since you've already started. But you can seek help. Some people who are using substances actually want to stop. So you can go to your GP and talk to your GP about the fact that you want to stop substance use, and your GP would actually guide you as regards to what to do. And also, there are some self-help groups you can join. Narcotics Anonymous is like a group that you can just join, and you get some help. There are some charity groups also that can help. In Nigeria, there are several neuropsychiatric hospitals that help with rehabilitation of people who use substances. Examples are places in Kaduna, there's another one in Abeokuta, and there's another one in Yaba. I know there are much more than that. There are private hospitals also, like my former place of work, Nova Crest Hospital in Abuja. There are medications that can help you to actually control your substance use. There are therapies, different forms of therapies that can be used. So please don't be afraid to seek help. Don't be afraid to talk to a professional. Some people would think that addiction is a choice. I want to tell you now that addiction is not a choice. It's just a medical condition that can be treated like any other medical condition. Yes, starting to use street drugs is a choice, but when it gets to the stage of being an addiction, it's no longer the person's choice. The person doesn't really have control over using it. So there can also be different reasons why people actually start using drugs, from having environmental stress, genetics. They are just genetically predisposed to getting addicted. People who are undergoing different stress, chronic life stresses, trauma, childhood trauma, things like that can just, peer pressure also. Just being around people who use drugs can be the reason why you start using drugs. Sometimes it's not even an active decision, it's just something passive that comes along the way. For example, when you eat, you get some level of feel good effect, or when you have sex, you have some level of feel good effect. And that's because when you do those things, your brain actually releases some level of dopamine. Now, for drugs use, when you use street drugs, your brain also have some feel good effect, but your brain releases a high level of dopamine, very high, significantly high, compared to if you eat. So that's why, that level of highness you get from drugs is quite different from just when you eat or when you do anything you enjoy. That's why the brain feels it and is like, oh my god, that was good. And it's just normal. For something that's giving you that high level of pleasure, you would want to use it again and again and again and again, and that's how you start craving for it. And it gets to a level where you can't you use a certain amount of it and you feel good, but later on, the same amount of that drug you've been using does not give you that amount of feel good effects that you used to get. That's what's called tolerance medically, and that means you want to upgrade and use more of it. So you get a lot of unpleasant effects from not using the drugs. You can see that the person will just be restless, sweaty, anxious. There's just this side effects in quotes that you get from not using the drugs. You get withdrawal symptoms from not using it. So because you don't want to get those withdrawal symptoms, you now tend to go back to using it and then getting the associated feel good effect, and the cycle continues. So it's not like at that point you don't have a choice anymore, because if you don't use the drugs you have unpleasant effects of not using the drugs, so you have to use the drugs, and with using the drugs you definitely get feel good effects. So that's how addiction works. And this now brings me to my last tip. This is just really a point that I'm going to be making to the general populace, everybody around. If you have someone who takes drugs or who is even trying to stop using drugs, please treat them kindly. Don't be judgmental towards them. This made me remember a scenario I just read online, and this lady and her partner went to it's not even related to drugs. They wanted to get contraception, but because they are not married, the person there, this happened in Nigeria anyway, and I read it online. I don't know those people. I don't know if it was true or not, but it just made me, think about how judgmental people can be. So they went there, they wanted to get a form of contraception, to prevent pregnancy since they were having sex. And this person just told them that no, they can't, she can't attest to them because they are not married, and she started preaching to them and all of that. I really wouldn't understand why someone would do that at their workplace, because you are employed for a particular reason. Provide contraception for people who come around. So it's not really any of your business if they're married or not. Just do the work you've been employed to do. The reason why I'm talking about preventing stigmatization and I'm passionate about it is because if people who use street drugs are being stigmatized against actively in the society, it prevents them from actually coming out to get the help that they need. You can imagine if someone knows that if I go to the hospital and I say I use drugs, they'll probably withdraw some services from me, or they'll probably treat me unkindly or be judgmental to me. Those people would probably not want to come to the hospital when they actually need to. They wouldn't want to seek help for their physical health. They wouldn't want to seek help for their mental health. They would rather just, lock themselves in the house instead of coming out to open up. So that's why the society holds them that responsibility. Treat them as you would treat any other person in the society who doesn't use drugs. And that's what the theme for this year is saying. Prevention, treating people kindly, avoiding stigmatizing or discriminating against people. I hope you've been able to learn a few things about drugs use, about prevention of drug use, how to seek help, and why to not stigmatize against people who use drugs, and also how addiction really works. Thank you so much for watching. If this video was helpful for you, kindly subscribe to this channel for more educational content and all around content really. Have a nice day. Bye.